10 worst Intercontinental title matches ever. Number 10, Randy Savage vs. George the Animal Steele, WrestleMania 2. The Macho Man might be responsible for one of the most beloved Intercontinental title matches in WrestleMania history, but he was also in one of the worst, against hairy, cretinous bollock George the Animal Steele, who spent the entire match doing animal things like biting Macho, hitting him with flowers, or rubbing turnbuckle stuffing in his face, like animals don't. Macho, in turn, spent most of the match just running away, then landing a sneaky shot while George Steele is in Animal Kingdom lust mode over Miss Elizabeth like the true babyface that he was, until a dirty pin finally ended it in a short but endless 5 minutes. 1 year later, Macho Man and Steamboat had their legacy-defining match at WrestleMania 3, and you know what? I think that match was actually better than this one, even without the insightful commentary of Vince McMahon and Susan St. James. Number 9, Maven vs. Shelton Benjamin, New Year's Revolution 2005. I mean, calling this a match is a bit of a leap. It's basically just a comedy sketch that massively outstays its welcome, and who knows more about that than me? Former sketch comedian Adam Blompier got 2 stars from 3 weeks at the Edinburgh Fringe in 2008, and I'm still clinging to comedy writing as a career. Anyway, Benjamin and Maven are set to wrestle. Maven comes out, talks to the Puerto Rican crowd in the kind of broken Spanglish that white mums used to berate waiters at a Tex-Mex, gets in the ring, is immediately beaten, begs for a rematch, is immediately beaten again. And that sounds kind of funny on paper, and sure, it's a functioning setup and payoff. The only downside is it takes bloody ages, with Maven mugging on the outside for over 6 full minutes before getting to the actual punchline. Goes from funny to boring very quickly. And is that my review of this match, or 3 weeks review of my 2008 sketch comedy show? I'll let you decide. Number 8, Big E vs. Apollo Crews, Fastlane 2021. This was just weird. So Apollo Crews was plucked out of NXT and brought up to the main roster in 2016. He had one very bland IC title match at SummerSlam and then pretty much disappeared. He was in Titus Worldwide. Remember that? 5 years after being called up to the main roster, they gave Apollo Crews his very first gimmick as heel Nigerian man with Royal Warrior overtones. Did one of the writers watch Black Panther by any chance? Anyway, at least this character change was something that Apollo could finally sink his teeth into after half a decade. And at Fastlane, the first pay-per-view since the gimmick change, he wrestled Big E for the Intercontinental title and lost in 5 minutes. After getting battered out the gate, the match ending with a weird botched roll-up thing that left the announcers not being sure if the match was over or not. That's a hot start for a gimmick, that. Number 7, Dean Douglas versus Razor Ramon in Your House 4. Oh, the new generation era where every wrestler was moonlighting as a plumber, a garbage man, a hockey player, a clown, or in this case, a crusty old Dean. Fresh off a World Championship run in mid-90s ECW, the best ECW with its triple threat faction, Shane Douglas arrived back in WWE and was given a paddle and a chalkboard, being rebranded as Dean Douglas. The gimmick flopped, with Douglas leaving the company about 6 months later, but hey, he did get an Intercontinental Championship run out of it. A run that lasted 20 minutes, being awarded the belt after HBK vacated it when some Marines beat him up, and then immediately dropping it to Razor Ramon. Not even Dean's Metal Gear Solid themed singlet could help him. The match itself was incredibly dull. Lots of rest holds and Razor battering Douglas for nearly the whole thing, before the match ended in a really weird, heatless way, with Razor giving Douglas a back suplex, then lying on the mat next to him with his arm slightly on Dean, which was enough to count as a pin. It's a back suplex, but also Dean's foot was under the, I don't know, D-. Number 6, The Rock versus the Sultan, WrestleMania 13. Oh good, the worst version of Rikishi versus the worst version of The Rock. It's an all-Alawahi bout on pay-per-view, but unlike their match at Survivor Series 2000, which was built around literal attempted murder, Rocky Maivia versus the Sultan was built on shrug. Seeing as neither man was over, the Sultan was a somehow even blander version of Lord Tensai, and Rocky was being roundly rejected as a happy-go-lucky babyface. WWE did what they always do, which is throw previous generation talent at the match to distract people long enough for 10 minutes to pass. Sultan had Bob Backlund and the Iron Sheik in his corner. Rocky got the assist from his dad, Rocky Johnson. Wait, they've got the same first name but different surnames. Does WWE know how names work? Maybe that's why they keep shortening them. There's something poetic about a man called Rocky coming out to save an actively not over family member from a stinker pay-per-view match, and then The Rock doing the same for Roman Reigns at Royal Rumble 18 years later, when all that was needed, turns out in both cases, was a good old-fashioned heel turn. Number 5, Santino Marella versus a Honky Tonk Man, Cyber Sunday 2008. Pretty rare to get halfway through a list about the IC title and not mention the, right now, longest reigning Intercontinental Champion champion of all time. Enjoy that record while it lasts, honks. Gunther's about to chop the living dick off it. Anyway, by and large, Honky's matches were pretty good. Followed your standard chicken shit heel formula, so stands to reason that his worst one was when he was a babyface, turning up for a Cyber Sunday match, being voted into it over Roddy Piper, which is a bold choice from the fans. Anyway, the match started with a dance-off, which gives you an idea of how ball-shrinking the whole thing was going to be. There are a few side headlocks before the match immediately ended in a DQ after Beth Phoenix tripped Honky while he was running the ropes to a giant, weary chorus of boos. Hey, thanks for spending all that money voting, idiot. God, imagine if that's how Ospreay Omega 2 ended, when Callis tripped Kenny. I want to live in that timeline. Number 4, the Intercontinental Elimination Chamber match, Elimination Chamber 2015. Oh no, they broke it! Multi-man Intercontinental title things are normally good. See the ladder match at Mania 31, ladder match at Mania 32, Fatal 4-Way Extreme Rules 2016, bunch of hot mid-carders in a match with a bunch of moving parts, great stuff. Till it isn't. Step right up, Elimination Chamber 2015, and the chamber match for the vacant Intercontinental title. Daniel Bryan died, so this match could live. You know the story by now, but in case this is your first internet rodeo, halfway through the chamber match, Wade Barrett threw Dolph Ziggler into the bulletproof plexiglass pod, which then proceeded to be very flimsy indeed, with the plexiglass popping out, flopping to the ground, and releasing Mark Henry into the match way too early, because there's no DQ. What else can you do other than sit in the middle of the ring and weep, which honestly would have been a lot more coordinated if they'd done that. Instead, the entire match fell apart, with World's Strongest Man and Hall of Pain founder Mark Henry spending most of the match buffering, and Dolph Ziggler calling out spots with the subtlety of an air horn with his dick caught in a swing door. Number 3, Dean Ambrose versus Seth Rollins, TLC 2018. The blow-off to the feud that killed Dean Ambrose's WWE career, hooray. In 2018, WWE decided to run back the Ambrose-Rollins feud from 2014, but with the roles reversed, even going as far as to recreate the breakup of the Shield. On the very same night that Roman stepped away to battle leukemia, Dean turned on Seth, and honestly one of the best and most emotionally charged heel turns ever. What happened next was WWE pissed all that heat away by turning Dean Ambrose into a thrift store Bane who came out and called the people smelly and got comedy shots in his comedy ass because wrestling fans have germs. And to be fair, yes, they do. Where's the lie? But on the other hand, little did they know that shot in the ass would transform Dean into John Moxley like the syringe was full of gamma radiation. At TLC 2018, the two men blew off their blood feud, which began the night Roman left to battle cancer in one of the most inexplicably boring-ass, regular-ass, heatless-ass matches of all time. How do these two have such a boring match? But they did indeed, so much so that the crowd booed it out of the building. Number 2, the Ultimate Warrior versus Goldust, in your house, good friends, better enemies. Hey, remember way back at the beginning of this list where I dunked on Maven versus Shelton Benjamin for being bad because it was a good joke stretched out for way too long? Well, that's what this is, but without the good joke. In 1996, the Ultimate Warrior returned after having career-ending arguments with Vince in 1991, and in 1992, he squashed Triple H at Mania 12, and then the only title match he had during his third run with the company was this absolute intercontinental turd. Ultimate Warrior got into the ring, Goldust got scared. Warrior got into Goldust's robe, sat in his chair. Goldust got into the ring. It looked like Warrior might kiss his hand. He burned it with a cigar instead. He clotheslined Goldust out of the ring. Count out. All of that took 8 fucking minutes. And it's so boring, and so shit, and so f***ing boring. Even Vince on commentary was saying, I have no idea what this is supposed to be. And needless to say, a few months later, Ultimate Warrior was again gone from the company after hitting the three-peat of him and Vince hating each other so very much. And number 1, Steve Austin versus Owen Hart, SummerSlam 1997. I mean, Warrior Goldust is definitely the worst match on this list, but this is probably one of the most calamitous matches in wrestling history. No one quite knew it at the time, but this match would end up taking years of ring time off the career of the man who drew the most money in the shortest amount of time in wrestling history, Stone Cold Steve Austin. It lives pretty much in infamy, but once more for the uninitiated, at SummerSlam 1997, Austin faced Owen Hart for the IC title, and what a lot of people have forgotten was a kind of kiss my ass match. Probably the reason no one remembers that is what happened mid-match, when Owen got Austin up for a tombstone, but instead of landing on his knees, he hit it in the sit-out position, compressing Austin's neck and briefly paralyzing him for what would be an absolutely terrifying few minutes of live wrestling. Austin recovered just enough to execute the worst roll-up in history on Owen Hart to win the title and not have to join the Kiss My Ass Club's Canadian branch with a broken freaking neck. Bad comedy is one thing, but this is a horrendous viewing experience that at least didn't end as badly as it could have. Small mercies. And that's our list. What's your least favorite Intercontinental title match? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to check out last week's list, which you can do right now. Speaking of good things, let's talk about professional wrestling. It's been a super odd 2023 so far. Dizzying highs, crashing into confusing lows, and of course those creamy middles, often on the very same pay-per-view. Get used to hearing the words WrestleMania 39, everybody. But for now, let's talk about the very tip-top best matches I saw in the first 6 months of this year. Here's to the next 6. Hope they're lovely and kind.